1968 was crammed with chart giants. Hey Jude, Jumpin Jack Flash, the Woodstock warm-ups, but plenty of sharp tracks slipped between the cracks. We found 12 rock cuts from that year that landed hard, then vanished. Number 1. SF Sorrow was born. The Pretty Things.
Let yourself hide away.
Work on the track kicked off in late 1967 at Abbey Road Studio 2. Phil May sang through a Neumann U67 set for extra saturation, and engineer Norman Smith borrowed a scrap of reversed cymbal tape he'd made during Penny Lane to open the cut. Guitarist Dick Taylor used a 1960 Les Paul plugged into an EMI-built fuzz box. The buzz was so thick, Smith rode the fader with one hand and the tone pot with the other. John Povey doubled the main riff on Mellotrons strings, then patched a harpsichord line straight into the desk because the studio rental fee was cheaper than moving a real one upstairs. When the 4-track filled, Smith bounced everything to a fresh reel, slapped on a hand-lettered note, "Born Master, don't erase," and ran to the canteen for tea before the band changed its mind. Columbia released SF Sorrow in the UK on the 13th of December 1968 with a gatefold comic strip that explained the plot. Only 8,000 copies shipped, and half of those went unsold after Christmas markdowns. Nobody pressed a UK single, so the label mailed acetate copies to the 3 US stations, WNEW-FM New York, WHFS Washington, and KSAN San Francisco. WNEW Scott Muni aired the whole first side just after midnight. Within a week, the import bins at Sam Goody sold out. Motown's Rare Earth imprint finally licensed the album for the United States in August 1969, long after Tommy had stolen the rock opera headline. Sales crept past 20,000 LPs, enough for the band to afford 2 new fuzz pedals and a small ad in Rolling Stone, which mistyped the title as SF Sour-O and blamed the printer. Number 2, Porpoise song, The Monkees. Sessions rolled at Western Recorders in Hollywood late February 1968. Carole King sat at a Wurlitzer-painted hospital green, knocking out the chord progression while Jerry Goffin rewrote verses on a legal pad that already held half the film's dialogue. Jack Nitzsche brought in 2 French horn players and a reel of ocean wave effects to give the track its swirling backdrop. A shimmering guitar slide sneaks under Mickey Dolentz's double-tracked vocal on the last take. A resonator note fed back into the horn mic, and everyone agreed it sounded like a dolphin. So Nietzsche told the tape op, "Leave it." Mike Nesmith overdubbed a Gretsch 12-string and joked the song would sell bread or bomb, nothing in between. Coal Gems issued the 4-minute, 12-second single on the 5th of October 1968, tied to the Monkees' film Head. AM programmers flagged the length and a cryptic opening line about the edge of the water. The record stalled at number 62 on Billboard but found life on FM underground playlists. KSAN ran it twice an hour opening week, framing it with Airplane's Lather and Santana's Jingo. Coal Gems pressed a run of marble vinyl promos for Los Angeles retail, but most copies ended up as freebies at UA theater showings of Head. Audiences walked out humming the chorus even if they weren't sure what they'd just watched. In 1971, Nimble Bread used the track in a UK TV spot. The jingle moved thousands of loaves, yet the single still never cracked the British Top 40. Dolenz now keeps the tune in set lists, stretching the outro long enough for Tex to swap his tambourine batteries. Nobody has the heart to tell him, tambourines don't need them. Number 3, The Red Telephone, Love.
I feel real phony when my name is
Arthur Lee tracked the swirl of Paranoia at Sunset Sound, Los Angeles, September 1967, finishing overdubs in January 1968, while Elektra rushed to close the books on Forever Changes. Lee sang through a Neumann U67, leafing through pages of lyrics stuck together with melted candle wax. Brian McLean's 12-string Gibson B45 jangled against a quiet cello line that session man Paul Rothschild insisted on doubling for stereo creep factor. Drummer Michael Stewart used brushes instead of sticks. Lee wanted the groove light enough to slip under a locked door. Elektra never issued the cut as a single. AM programmers were already skittish about a lyric opening with, They're locking them up today. FM underground stations thought differently. KPPC Pasadena aired the entire 6-minute track on the 14th of April, 1968, between The Doors and Tim Buckley, prompting record store clerks to handwrite the title on Ask Me cards. College kids bought the album, but without a 45, the song never sniffed the Billboard chart. In 1997, Mojo polled musicians on deep tracks that shaped psych rock. This one landed top 10, tucked between Beefheart and Syd Barrett. Number 4, Street Song, The 13th Floor Elevators.
Well, I'm going back to the country.
The Elevators were unraveling when they cut Street Song. Rocky Erickson was already drifting from the sessions. Tommy Hall still piped his jug through swirling reverb, and guitarist Stacey Sutherland, quietly steering what remained, led the recordings at Walt Andrus Studios in Houston, likely early 1968. Sutherland layered guitar parts with contrasting textures, one clean and chiming, the other snarling through fuzz, while Danny Thomas tapped out a lurching rhythm that gave the track the uneasy sway of a haunted carousel. Producer Jim Stevenson tried shaping a single from it, but International Artists was broke, and radio had no appetite for a 5-minute psych dirge that name-checks flashing city canyons. The track eventually surfaced on Bull of the Woods, released in late 1968, with little fanfare and bare-bones packaging. There were no singles, no tour, just a quiet press run and some late-night spins on scattered underground FM stations across Texas, where Street Song pulsed between Quicksilver Messenger Service and the Velvet Underground, rattling a few lava lamps in dorm rooms that were still tuned in. Sutherland died in 1978. Erickson wandered in and out of music for decades. Street Song sat in the shadows until a 2009 remaster peeled back the mix, revealing subtle detunings and layered guitars that drift just enough to make the whole thing shimmer like sirens passing in the night. Number 5, Fresh Garbage, Spirit.
The world's a can for your fresh garbage.
Spirit cut their debut at Western Recorders in Hollywood in late 1967, squeezing in sessions around bookings for bigger-name acts. Producer Lou Adler let drummer Ed Cassidy set up on a hardwood riser to add some natural boom to his jazz-rooted thump, while keyboardist John Locke reportedly ran his organ through a Leslie cabinet positioned just outside the tracking room to catch more ambient swirl. 19-year-old Randy California, barefoot, orange crush in hand, plugged a Strat into a cranked Fender Twin, favoring what he called Hendrix settings minus the Marshalls. Singer-percussionist Jay Ferguson pieced together the lyrics after wandering Sunset Boulevard and noticing how fast people stepped over litter without looking down. He kept that mood in the mix, tapping a Coke bottle during the chorus for a tinny, off-kilter accent. Columbia chose Mechanical World as the A-side, but pressed Fresh Garbage on the flip, released May 4th, 1968, catalog number 444115. AM radio passed, but FM outposts from WNEW in New York to KMPX in San Francisco started dropping it into their hazy late-night eco sets, usually sandwiched between Country Joe and the Byrds' Change Is Now. The debut LP gained slow traction, enough to land Spirit a spot at the Miami Pop Festival, where they briefly crossed paths with Hendrix again. Years later, A Tribe Called Quest lifted the drum intro for Go Ahead in the Rain, giving the groove a new life through dorm room speakers in 1990. Still fresh, still strange. Number 6, Smell of Incense, Southwest F.O.B.
And the smell of incense fills her room.
Dallas teenagers Dan Seals and John Coley, soon to find adult life fame as England Dan and John Ford Coley, fronted this 12-piece high school band named after the trucking term freight on board. Abnac Records boss John Abner booked them into Robin Hood Bryan's studio in Tyler, Texas, late June 1968. Engineer Robin Hood ran the Hammond B3 through the station's unused TV echo chamber, then bounced the track to 8-track so Seals could double a fuzz guitar line on a borrowed Gibson Firebird. The song itself is a cover of the West Coast pop art experimental band's 1967 deep cut. Seals trimmed it from 7 minutes to an AM-friendly 255 by chopping the freak-out middle and replaced it with a single bar of Ride Cymbal Wash. Abnac shipped the single on the 24th of August 1968. Catalog AB 137. It edged onto the Billboard Hot 100 at number 99 in October, peaked at number 56 on the 14th of December, and hit number 43 on the Cashbox survey. Respectable numbers for a regional Texas label with promo reach no further than St. Louis. The band mimed the song on American Bandstand on the 7th of December 1968, where Dick Clark teased the group for smelling more like Brill cream than Incense. Southwest F.O.B. split in 1970, but the single's swirl vinyl promo pressing remains a Dallas show poster collector's grail, often topping $150 at Lone Star record fairs. Number 7, long time coming, The Electric Flag.
Shoulda quit you a long time ago.
Mike Bloomfield's new American music band hit Columbia's Hollywood rooms in January 1968 with half a brass section and enough guitar amps to trip studio breakers. Bloomfield laid the main lick on a Sunburst 1958 Les Paul through a blackface twin. Engineer Fred Cotero padded the inputs, saying, "That's still not jazz volume, Mike." Buddy Miles punched a snare crack so hot the overhead mic clipped. Cotero left the distortion in because it matched the horns. Columbia pushed the album, A Long Time Comin', out on the 28th of March 1968. The title track tagged along on a promo 45 for Underground FM. WNEW-FM New York slotted it next to Cream Cuts, and the LP crept to number 31 on Billboard's Top 100. AM programmers shrugged at a song that changed tempo 3 times, but Bloomfield's mix of Memphis horns and Chicago guitar turned West Coast hippies into soul rock believers. Santana's Greg Rowley later said he lifted his B3 setting straight from Cotero's board notes. Pull the 5 and drawbars. Dime the Leslie. Pray the fuse holds. Number 8, I Can't Let Maggie Go, Honeybus.
I can't let Maggie go.
In early 1968, singer-songwriter Pete Dello ran the basic track on a nylon string Framus acoustic while arranger Andrew Rose stacked piccolo, oboe, and a Mellotron flute patch that made the chorus float. Durham Rush released the single on the 29th of March 1968. It climbed to number 8 in the UK by mid-May. Durham's US arm sent 2,000 promos to top 40 stations, but bosses thought the title sounded like a country weeper and filed it wrong. The record stalled under miscellaneous pop, never cracking any national chart, though New Orleans WTIX kept it in light rotation for 6 weeks, after a DJ's English pen pal hyped the B-side. In 1971, the track resurfaced in a British bread loaf TV ad. Viewers hummed along, sales of nimble low-cal bread jumped, but American audiences still missed the tune. Collectors now chase the U.S. stock copy, Durham 45 DE 85060. Fewer than 500 are thought to exist, most stamped "Return to Vendor" in red grease pencil. Number 9, Fire Brigade, The Move. The idea hit Roy Wood in Birmingham over breakfast. Build a hook as short and loud as a siren. A few days later, the band set up at Olympic Studios. Wood hammered the riff on his 1960 Gibson 335, while a borrowed bicycle bell sat on the music stand for quick dings between chords. Producer Denny Cordell kept telling drummer Bev Bevan, "Again, but make the snare sound like a door slam." And engineer George Cheekins nudged the tape into the red so the cymbals smear whenever that bell rings. Regal Zonophone rushed the single out on the 2nd of February 1968, and it parked at number 3 in the UK 2 weeks later, one slot above the Small Faces. Across the Atlantic, A&M mailed maybe 3,000 promos with a cover letter calling the Move Britain's loudest pop group. Most U.S. program directors misfiled it under novelty, but Detroit's WKNR liked anything noisy and kept Fire Brigade in rotation all spring. Local shops moved a modest 10,000 copies, enough for teenage garage players to lift the descending riff. 4 years later, Alice Cooper guitarist Glenn Buxton admitted the hook in Schools Out started as his best guess at Wood's opening climb. The Move themselves never cracked the American Top 40, but echoes of that bell still turn up in Midwest record bins. Usually stuck to a faded A&M sleeve that once promised fire but delivered sparks most stations never heard. Number 10, and the address, Deep Purple. Before Hush and the Smoke on Any Water, Deep Purple's calling card was this 4-minute instrumental. They recorded it during their first trip to London's Delaine Leah studio in March 1968. Ritchie Blackmore plugged his 63 Strat straight into a Vox AC30 with the treble boost punched, while John Lord cranked a Hammond B3 through a Marshall stack loud enough that the assistant engineer taped a warning, "Organ Grenade," on the channel fader. Tetragrammaton Records, a brand new Los Angeles label, gambled on releasing the group's debut album in the United States first, dropping Shades of Deep Purple on the 17th of July, 1968, 3 months before the UK got it. FM stations in San Francisco, KSAN, and New York, WNEW, liked the track as a top-hour segue between Cream and Quicksilver Messenger service. Listeners who called to ask, "Who's that?" were told, "Some British kids, heavy as a freight elevator." First press U.S. sales crossed 50,000 by Labor Day, convincing Tetragrammaton to bankroll a stateside tour where Deep Purple opened for Cream's farewell shows at the Forum and the Oakland Coliseum. The band dropped "And the Address" from live sets after 1969. Blackmore joked fans preferred songs with words, but the opening guitar organ unison run later resurfaced in Speed King. And in 2020, the current lineup brought the tune back for their Whoosh album, a reminder that the very first address they gave rock listeners was a loud one. Number 11, Think About It, the Yardbirds. With Keith Relf ready to go solo and Chris Drea eyeing photography school, the band booked a quick weekday at Advision Studios, London. Jimmy Page brought a Telecaster wired for out-of-phase tone and cut the main take in one run, stacking a second solo full of rapid pull-offs that would resurface a year later inside Whole Lotta Love. Epic issued the track only as the US B-side to Goodnight Sweet Josephine in March 1968, catalog number 510382. Top 40 stations flipped the single once they heard Page's break, but the release still stalled at number 126 on Billboard's Bubbling Under chart. WNEW-FM in New York and KMPX San Francisco moved it into after midnight sets next to Cream, and West Coast guitar shops got new requests for That Yardbirds Fast Run. When Zeppelin hit American clubs 9 months later, a few DJs greeted them with the line, "Here's the guy from that B-side everybody taped off the radio." Number 12, The Garden of Earthly Delights, the United States of America. Joe Bird wanted an opener that felt like chamber music wired through a Cold War-era control panel. So Columbia handed him 3 overnight slots in Studio A, Hollywood, October 1967. Guitars were off limits. Violinist Gordon Marin sustained eerie bow strokes while his signal ran through early tape-based effects. Vocalist Dorothy Moskowitz sang into a Neumann U67 patched through a homemade ring modulator, built by then grad student Tom Oberheim, using surplus electronic components scavenged from university labs. Bassist Rand Forbes ran his jazz bass through filters that warped the low end into something subsonic, and Bird used photosensitive tone generators to sweep pitches with hand gestures, somewhere between a theremin and a science fair project. The result was alien and baroque, like Sadie on acid piped through Mission Central. Columbia released the United States of America on March 6, 1968. No single, just a modest sticker that read Electronic Rock from the Future. AM stations didn't know what to do with it, but late-night FM DJs at KPPC in Pasadena, KSAN in San Francisco, and WNEW-FM in New York dropped it between Zappa cuts and import copies of King Crimson. The LP briefly charted at number 181 before Columbia shifted promo dollars to Simon & Garfunkel's Bookends. College kids picked up the static. One Southern California show nearly went off the rails when a modulator glitch screeched through the house mix. Someone killed the mains, and Bird calmly stepped up to apologize for the brief detour. First press Columbia 2 odd copies, Matrix CL 11204, still trade for solid money. Listen close to the run-out groove. You'll swear you hear the ghost of a loop whirring just before the stylus lifts. That's all we have for today. If another 68 sleeper belongs here, drop it below and we'll dig it up next time.